Welcome to the HCI family of podcasts. We're your source for personal, professional, and organizational growth and development. We share our own original research, explore industry trends, and interview executives and thought leaders from across the globe. Join us for practitioner-oriented content around all things leadership, HR, talent management, organizational development, and change management. Maximize your personal and organizational potential with the HCI family of podcasts. Justin Jones-Fosu, welcome to the conversation today.
Thank you, John.
It is a real pleasure to be with you. You're joining us from North Carolina. I'm south of Salt Lake City in Utah. And today we're going to be talking about your book, I Respectfully Disagree, How to Have Difficult Conversations in a Divided World. And boy, oh boy, are we in a divided world right now? Polarization is the name of the game. I feel like politically, of course, socially, economically, like there's just all this polarization. There's all of this division. I think, social media channels thrive off of animosity and division. That gets ramped up in other forms of media to drive clicks and those sorts of things. And yeah, I think we're in a really dangerous place right now. Looking at the state of things in the United States, but other parts of the world too. It's not unique to us. And it's like we've forgotten how to just have civil dialogue, how to just converse with someone who may think differently than you. And I mean, don't get me wrong. I have opinions, I have strong opinions about a lot of things. And frankly, I think I'm right about most of those opinions that I hold. But there are ways for me to engage with folks and really listen and try to understand where they're coming from and simply to not be an asshole and how I interact with them,
Yeah.
even if we disagree on pretty fundamental things. And so that's like I feel like that's a lost art. It's something we need to recapture if we hope to have any sort of normalcy in society as we move into the future. And but there's a lot of incentives out there to keep us from moving that direction. So, anyways, we're going to explore all of this. These are those types of things that you talk about in your book. I'm thrilled to have a chance to chat with you. As we get started, I wanted to share Justin's bio with everybody. Justin Jones-Fosu is the embodiment of energy, both at home and as a dedicated father to two spirited children and atop the world's highest peaks, having recently conquered one of the famed seven summits. But Justin's passion for elevation doesn't end with trekking. It's mirrored in his professional his professional ascent as a captivating business speaker, innovational social entrepreneur, and insightful workplace researcher. At the helm of Meaningful, Justin is driving force and CEO behind a movement that empowers organizations across the globe, delivering over 50 keynote addresses a year on the pivotal topics of meaningful work and inclusion. His mission to ignite and transform business and organizational culture, guiding organizations and individuals to ascend to their peak potential through mastery of mindset, purpose, and performance. And he works as a pathfinder in the wilderness, but also in the literary world, authoring essential reads such as Your Why Matters Now, The Inclusive Mindset, and his latest, I Respectfully Disagree, with which we're going to be talking about today. Again, I could go on, but I'm going to pause there. Justin, anything you would like to highlight by way of your background or personal context before we just launch on in?
I love long walks on the beach, and no, I'm joking, even though I do. But this is my goal is not just for all the leaders who are listening to this to give them things that they can apply to their leadership. It's also how people can apply the same principles to their individual lives at home and in the community.
No, I think that's great, and I agree. I think we're all leaders, regardless of organizational role at work, personal leadership, family leadership, community leadership, organizational leadership. A lot of these principles just apply universally across all these areas, and I think especially this topic, and the topic of your book is one that reaches all different areas of our life. And we just need to get better at it, as I was mentioning in the introduction. So thank you again for taking the time. As we get started, I wanted to pick your brain just around, kind of your why behind this book, like why this book, why now?
Yeah. For several reasons. And you actually brought up something, it goes beyond the US. And I recently actually just received something, and it's a copy of the book. I have no idea what language this is, but I was sent a sample of this is my book. I respectfully disagree in a different language. So That was really, really
Yes.
exciting to just receive that. And really that's my heartbeat, right? Is to create a movement around not just US, but around the world to help people to respectfully disagree in ways that honor each other and humanity. I started noticing just in the work that I would do in organizations, I would notice that people felt like in order to, respect someone, that you had to kind of go along and play along and operate from ideologies that weren't your own or even minimize your own. And as I started noticing that people started operating in kind of in a silence culture in order to not be
Mm,
quote unquote canceled, that we were missing an opportunity to help people to actually engage in something that was powerful. And I actually don't like the term specifically conflict resolution. I want to reframe it as conflict revolution because I think
mm,
with healthy conflict, it allows us to think differently, allows innovation and creativity to come forward, and it creates a better space. And I've seen that in my own life. Without going into the longer example, with time with my dad, of learning to respectfully disagree with him and why he wasn't there for me in my own life growing up.
mhm.
It ended up leading me to forgiveness and actually creating a version of our relationship that I never would have thought possible. But so it's not just for what we can do in workplaces, but also how this mends us in our personal lives.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that. And yeah, we all can probably at least relate to some extent around, strained family relationships, that can be hard. I love my parents.
Yeah,
We don't agree on a lot of things,
yeah,
and I appreciate everything they've done for me, but we don't agree on a lot of things. And so,
yeah,
like, how do we approach each other, in a loving, civil way that still honors the individual and their humanity, and like everyone is deserving of dignity and respect,
yeah,
and regardless of kind of where they fall across various points of view. And that I mean, it may mean I completely disagree in certain ways, like in some ways incredibly strongly, and I may be troubled even by like the types of things some people believe, but I can still recognize the why behind they believe it,
yeah,
like the human nature behind it, the some of those types of things, to maybe have a little bit of understanding and empathy around why they came to that place. And maybe, just maybe, if I can approach them in a more empathetic way and have some civil dialogue with them, maybe over time we can come to a place where at least they can better respect where I'm coming from, if not
mm,
perhaps even rethink some of the things that they think or say or do that I find so troubling.
right,
But certainly what's not going to happen is if I just go in guns a blazing, attacking, trying to tear down. There's just going to be the reinforce the double down kind of reinforcement effect of that. It's going to have the exact opposite impact of what I might have intended in like going after somebody for what they think or believe or say.
yeah,
So it's a tricky thing. It's really hard, and I like how you frame it as a revolution.
yeah.
I think that's a really powerful framing.
Yeah, and thanks, John. I think a couple of things you shared, I want to help differentiate for people because I love that
Yeah.
you talked about your love for your parents, which you absolutely should always have love for your parents. But sometimes people think that even in our disagreements that we should show quote unquote love to the other person. And so that kind of leads us to redefining what respect looks like. Because oftentimes what we found in even in our own qualitative research is that people define respect very differently. You had a
Mm,
different response to somebody in the military that may have been somebody who grew up in the South or other places, right? And so respect we found was defined very differently. And we call it our 10 characteristics of golden respect. I'm not going to go through all 10, but just to call out a few of them that we found that in society it's normally been defined of that I have to agree with you, right? That means I respect you, right? And that's not true respect. I mean, we see it in workplaces. If a person, if a leader sometimes doesn't get the kind of belief system in their direct reports, they feel disrespected, quote unquote, right? We also feel like that I have to honor you, and that's also not respect, right? I think we've conflated the terms of honor and respect, right? That I have to see you in high regard. Like you don't have to love the person. You don't have to hold hands and sing kumbaya, right? But the truth is that we show respect by listening, by doing the things you've shared, John, in terms of listening, engaging, better understanding how they got there, even if you vehemently disagree with their ideology. And last but not least, we sometimes we found, especially leadership, I love this, is that we sometimes think that my title deserves respect, right? That I am a
Mm,
leader, I'm a people leader, I am the CEO, I am whatever, rather than humanity
mm,
is worthy of
yeah.
respect, right? That every single human being is worthy of that value, dignity, and respect. And so our goal has been to show people practical ways to actually lean in and show this concept of respect that people can see, feel, and value.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think it's really, really important. I see it all the time. Like people who think if you were going to show me respect, that means you shouldn't challenge me. That means you shouldn't. That I mean, you should basically agree with me. Otherwise,
Right.
you're somehow, just super negative and in some way just completely disrespecting me as a person. And that's never what it was. In fact, that's part
Yeah.
of why we're in this situation.
Yeah.
Right? Is like at some point over time it morphed
Yeah.
into like this conception that people have that you have to look, think, talk, act, the same as I do. Otherwise, you're disrespecting me. Otherwise,
Yeah.
you're somehow invalidating me as a person. And I'm like, no, that's not true at all. And I don't know, it's kind of crazy that we've gotten to this place, but it's there. This is where we're at, and this is where we're navigating. And so, if we want to have like a dynamic, pluralistic democracy in this
Mhm.
country, if we want to have thriving, inclusive organizations where everyone feels needed, wanted, valued, an opportunity to contribute in meaningful ways daily, where they can bring their whole authentic self to work. If like we want that within the organizational setting, we got to get past this false understanding of like what it means to actually value somebody or respect somebody,
Yeah.
and get back to what it really actually means. And that actually gives us so much more runway and leeway to like interact with each other and to do it in a way that is actually meaningful, and in a way that is genuine.
Yeah.
Otherwise what you end up getting is like you said earlier, like the cancel culture, people afraid to say anything because they're afraid of saying it the wrong way or saying something that contradicts or pushes back against someone else in a position of power or whatever, right? Like
Mm.
there's just a silence that happens, and then I worry about like the complicity of like not
Mm.
speaking up when you see
Right.
like really horrible things that actually
Yep.
need to be pushed back on. And there's plenty of examples of that right now as well, right? So yeah, absolutely, I appreciate that.
Yeah, and
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. Yeah, I was saying part of it is I think it's rewriting what I'm calling our human algorithm. You actually given me a whole new
Mhm.
concept today as I was listening to you. It's the algorithms, right? Apps and all these things, national media in many ways have kind of created our own algorithm where it's become less and less of a focus for us to have civil conversations, to respectfully dialogue, all these pieces. And so, how do we begin to rewrite some of these? Because I've
Mm,
seen it happen, right? I was recently given a presentation on respectful disagreement, and one of the leaders shared with me they had kind of preempted my presentation to this group with some things that are happening in society. All right, just
mhm,
sample things, and something was around Israel, right?
mhm,
And within the group, they were talking about just the difference of Israel and Hamas and different things and all. And the person emailed the group and said that they didn't feel safe, and that bothered me, John. I'll tell you why it bothered me. Because we have co-opted terms like safety and utilized it for uncomfortable. And I take people's safety very seriously. That person was not unsafe in that moment. People weren't saying anything violently or threatening, according to their own statement. They were just sharing their opinions and their perspectives. And because their perspectives were different than that person's, and because that person was so tightly coupled to that identity, they felt unsafe. And I would like to push back and say they felt uncomfortable. And we don't
mm,
know how to feel in our own human algorithms, how to feel uncomfortable because we're not encountering people in spaces that are different than us, that have variety of differences. And so I want to give just one practical way to begin to challenge a little of that comfort and to start rewriting our human algorithm. And that's in our first pillar of our five, is that's challenge your perspective. And one way that we can proactively challenge our perspective is to actually seek out disagreement. I know it seems crazy in a world that we just want to center ourselves around what we already know, believe, like, and trust. What if we did what we call the Circles of Grace Challenge, where every 6 to 12 months I go to events, experiences, or I engage with people in either which I don't know a lot about and or I directly disagree with. And I go only asking two questions. What did I learn about the event, experiences, and our people? And what did I learn about myself as I experienced
Mm,
them? If we don't exercise those muscles, then every time we get into disagreements, it becomes more of a defensive mechanism rather than
yeah.
truly hearing out the perspective and understanding of others.
I love that. Surrounding yourself with difference in an actual meaningful way where you're seeking to understand and like you said, understanding self and understanding others and the interplay, right? And the interaction between the two. Yeah, we just get so siloed. We get so whether it's an organizational silo or a social silo, we tend to stick with who we're comfortable with. And so we tend to interact with mostly with those who are like us, that look like us, think like us,
Yeah.
talk and act like us. And then we to your point, like we just forget how to
Yeah.
interact with difference, you know.
Yeah.
And a big part of all of the post kind of George Floyd DEI push across corporate America was kind of the surface level performative response to like difference and inclusion. And part of the reason why the pendulum has swung back, I mean, there's a lot of reasons, but like one of the reasons why the pendulum has swung back, and why DEI itself has become so polarizing is because it was so performative and
Yeah.
it lacked depth and it didn't actually engage people in real difference. We were saying things, we were checking boxes, we were, going for percentages and it hurt the cause, that we
Yeah.
didn't do it in a real way. And so getting back to a place where we can actually genuinely interact with difference in a meaningful way. And it doesn't mean I endorse it. It doesn't mean I agree with it. It doesn't mean
Right.
that I want to live that way. But if I can't ever get out of my comfort zone to go interact with events or people or things that are different than me, or have different assumptions or different worldview than me, like what chance do I have to actually challenge my own thinking, to actually challenge my own assumptions, to better understand myself and therefore understand others around me better? We just get so locked into our own little bubbles. And I
Yeah.
think we just that's reinforced through social media and media consumption. And then we just, yeah, I think most people don't even fully realize how
Yeah.
locked in they are to their own little echo chamber bubble, you know?
Yeah, it's the ease of use. I mean, think about it. Uh, Even to take it out of the realm of social media and news for a moment, with the rise of dating apps, which fortunately I've had the privilege of never being on one,
Me
but
either.
in terms of learning from others, how easy it is to swipe. Well, I don't know what it is, left or right. I don't know, but it's easy just to say mute. I no longer want to talk to this person because they say something that was uncomfortable for me. I'm not talking about threatening. I'm not talking about something that was harsh, but they
Yeah.
said they challenged us in a certain way, right? That we were like, oh no, I don't need. I can just easily mute you. I can cancel you. I can stop you on my page. I can block you. And because it's become so easy, we tend to look for that same ease in life. And that's where you see the rise in relationships of ghosting and people just, cutting people off and family members, all these things. We haven't given people the tools and practice how to have these challenging and hard conversations. And so, what does it take, especially for leaders, to do this? It takes us having the intention to do it. It's not just going to be something that pops up because in our world today, in all aspects of our world, ease is the golden tool.
Hmm.
And versus what I feel is the most meaningful is often not the easiest. The easiest thing for me to do as a parent of my kids is just to let them do what they want to do. But
Hmm.
that's not going to be the most meaningful for them to grow into responsible and helpful adults. And that's why I love what my mom did. My mom, when we were growing up, she would actually take us to events that we disagreed with. And it became a seed planting. And I hated it going to them. I was like, why are we here? We don't even agree with this, mom. Like, but what I didn't realize she was doing is that she was planting these seeds of humanity, of
Yeah.
that even in the midst of our disagreements, that I could still find the humanity of a person and check this out, because sometimes we think respectful disagreement is about us convincing the other person. No, that we challenge that premise, right? Respectful disagreement is hearing the other person, because we've all been, I don't know about you, John, but I've been in situations where over my life, my perspective has changed on things. There's some things that I
Absolutely.
held as tightly coupled that I've loosely coupled or even completely switched. And there's some things that I still, hold hard, has to hold hard truth to me. And so when we listen and engage people in that way, when we model the behaviors as leaders, to hear people genuinely, to be lost in their story, not that and now it inherits our stories inherited in theirs, but we actually hear them for them. It allows us to hear, to find gray spots, to find these hidden moments, to find nuance to conversation that we never knew existed, if we choose to intentionally first do that.
Yeah. And I genuinely enjoy having conversations with folks. It can be uncomfortable. And sometimes it pushes me on the line of like, is this actually harmful or is this just me challenging my
Mm,
discomfort? I don't think that's a bad thing, for
yeah.
me to be put in that position to try to navigate that. Because if I'm so comfortable that I'm never even close to that line, then I'm probably not challenging myself, my own assumptions. I'm not listening hard enough, those sorts of things. Yeah. I just think this is such a challenging thing, and maybe in the remaining few minutes we have together, like let's talk about, I know you address this in your book, like how do we actually engage in these difficult conversations as leaders in organizations? How do we model this for our people? How do we encourage this for our people without just going off the rails? Because one thing I've observed is so many leaders, they're afraid of things
Right.
going off the rails that they actually put in place kind of all sometimes explicitly spoken, but most of the time,
Stifling.
unspoken kind of just norms around we don't go there, we don't talk about these types of
Right.
things, we don't challenge each other, blah, blah, blah. And then you get this echo chamber effect, you get the groupthink effect, you get all that kind of stuff. So, like, how can we encourage this and model this in a healthy way as
Yeah.
leaders within our organizations?
There's a lot of ways. I'll give three practical ways that we can lean in, no matter what your level is in the organization. One is to ask for disagreement, and I know it sounds simple, but you would not know how the amount of leaders that don't ask in their meetings. Let's take it out of societal for a moment. Let's just talk about in our meetings. In our meetings, that I want you to disagree with me, right? And to not just do it once. That's where I made the mistake. As a person who wrote this book, I had a 7 year employee leave, and I believe in doing true exit interviews. And I asked in terms of what is one of the reasons you're leaving, and they shared that they didn't feel like they could honestly disagree with me because I was so passionate about my views. And in my brain, I went to immediately like, wait a minute, I've always said that you can disagree with me.
Right.
But what I didn't realize is that just because I said it once doesn't mean that it continues to be reinforced in the minds of our people. And so, one, consistently asking for people to disagree with you is a hallmark aspect of a leader that creates that type of respectful disagreement culture. Number two is reinforcing it. And so, John,
Mhm.
thank you so much for disagreeing with me on that. I appreciate you sharing that perspective. I never would have come to this other thought if it had not come from that idea, because now you just reinforced in front of other people that disagreement is actually okay. And third, if a result comes from that, especially positive results, come back to that conversation 2 months, three months later, because it signals something in your employees' minds that this is actually something very important. So those are three practical things. The last thing I'd say is that for us to be wary as leaders of what we uncovered in our research, another area that I didn't even know existed. I initially just wanted to help people to go from disrespectful disagreement to respectful disagreement. I didn't know there's a whole nother category called disrespectful agreement, is where
Mm,
people go along. They may say things like, "Oh yeah, I
passive
definitely
aggressive.
agree," but behind you, right, passive aggressive, behind your back, they're like, "Why would John even say that?" Or they might have grown up in a situation of society or culture where they were taught that children should be seen and not heard. And so they bring that into the workplace. And so they don't want to rock the boat, cause any conflict. And so as a leader, it's our responsibility to not only model the behavior, to ask for the respectful disagreement, but to also be vulnerable and share where we have faulted, where we have failed, like I did with my 7 year team member, of realizing that my passion communicated, "Don't disagree with me," rather than consistently communicating the need for respectful disagreement. And the last but not least is to agree to respect. Let's throw away the concept agree to disagree. What if we end it with it's our fifth pillar of our five is agree to respect. And one way we can agree to respect is by fully acknowledging the person. Even if you practice these three things, John Zhao, Stanford researcher, brought this forward. John, I want to say thank you so much for sharing your perspective with me. I've never heard it shared that way. Or, John, wow. You mentioned three things. Number two really captured my attention. I have to do some more research on it, but I appreciate you choosing to share with me because it allowed me to think about this in a different way. Or simply, last but not least, John, wow, you shared some really hard things with me today. And I know this was a tough conversation for us to have, but I want to thank you because you chose to have it with me, and I'm grateful.
Yeah,
Not
I love it.
once that I disagree with you, right? Excuse me, not once did I say that I fully agreed with you. But we've often conflated full agreement with full acknowledgement. And like Shan Zhao, who came up with the concept, thank you because it allows us to communicate with people in a way that they can feel fully acknowledged, even if we don't fully agree.
Yeah, it's beautiful. So needed. Justin, this has just been a real pleasure. I know at the time I need to let you go, but before we wrap things up, I wanted to give you a chance to share with the audience how they can connect with you, find out more about your work, where they can find your book, and then give us the final word for today.
Absolutely. They can connect with me at workmeaningful.com on social media, where I often share my faults on LinkedIn, Justin Jones-Fosu. And I respectfully disagree is all over, especially Amazon and other places. But my goal, my hope, my desire is that we would ask, how do we show just a little bit more humanity to people and to intentionally allow ourselves to hear perspectives that are outside our own, not all the time, but take on a Circles of Grace challenge every 6 to 12 months. Challenge yourself to go out and hear perspectives that you might disagree with. And you might find out that you've learned something new about that person, that ideology, or that you learned something new about yourself, or both.
I love it. Justin, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. I encourage the audience to reach out, get connected, find out more about what Justin can do for you. Check out the book. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the podcast. We hope you stay healthy and safe, and please join us again soon.